I screwed up, you know, don't hold it against me. Welcome back to Freedom One Garage. Yeah, we're flirting with 98 degrees in the shop right now. That's inside. We're on the 1972 Plymouth Valiant. Used to be a slant 6, now it's a 318 car. We're going to take care of issue number 1, which is it runs like crud because something goofy's happening with the Holley here. Alright, what do we got here? We got this spring that we don't know for sure why it's doing what. We got washer, kick down linkage. Alright, we're on the bench with our Holley 600. And as soon as we get it off the car, we notice that it comes back to idle a little bit better. If you just have it, you know, quarter throttle, let go, snaps back. It's all the way down. However, if you come up here and then you just bring them back real softly, you get that stop. And then there's idle. Come up, come back down, there's idle. But it's not as bad as when it was installed on the car. So I've had this happen lots of times. You got to look at your base plate gasket. Sometimes the butterflies will hang up in the base plate gasket, especially if you're using some sort of an adapter. Say you're using a 2 to 4 barrel adapter, or a narrow board, a wide bore adapter, something like that. A lot of times some of those gaskets that come into kits don't like those adapters and things. But here we've got something that's just hanging us up right above idle. And so let's go examine the underside of this carb. Gasket looks to be sealing. You can see the plenum opening for the Edelbrock Performer intake. We don't have any interference. We don't have any interference on this side, on the throttle side. But now let's go over here onto the choke side. Look right. I need a pointy. Right here we have a spring that is part of the choke mechanism that is actually down against the gasket, and then this little arm, also part of the choke movement, is actually in contact with the gasket, and you can see there's a little wear mark right there. So let's get this choke off and see if we can't first fix that little issue. And then I think what we might end up doing is just going through the settings on this carburetor, making sure everything works right, and if it snaps back to idle like it's supposed to, we might just throw it back on, check the float levels, idle air mixture, and that kind of stuff, and see how much of our problem is solved just by getting this choke linkage fixed, because this could also cause a little bit of a vacuum leak if we're not careful. Although this choke is not operational, it does have it's got a broken piece or two, and might even be missing a piece. This section down here was installed correctly. It's just this base plate gasket is a little too wide. What we need to do is just shave that off flush with the side of base of the carb. Like that. Alright, choke's back together. The choke doesn't work, so we just have it adjusted so that it will not close. And then this is how you want your carburetor to come back to idle. It's all the way back. You can hear it snap up against that stop. If you let off it slow, it comes back all the way every time. So life is pretty good there now. I don't think this is going to be a wintertime car for this gentleman, so we're probably just fine putting it back together so that the choke is always off, but the car idles in a somewhat friendly manner. So here's what's going on. This hardware store spring that is fixed to the kickdown linkage is just too strong. It's overpowering the return spring for the Holley and even this extra little return spring here for the throttle return. I am a total fan of when you need to go to the hardware store and make it work, do it. It's just this thing is a little bit too strong and not long enough to get to here. If you put it all the way up to here where we want to put it, it's too strong. It won't let it come back to idle. So what I've done in the hardware spirit is we're just gonna add this guy right off the back of the carb. It's just some aluminum flat stock. It'll bolt down to that corner bolt of the carb right there through that hole, and then we drilled another 1/8 inch hole for this little hardware spring, so to have about the right tension for the kickdown linkage, and then we'll see what that looks like. I like that. I like that quite a bit. Okay, we're happy on that end. Oh, I lost my hose clamp on my fuel hose. Oh, golly. Here we go. Well, that won't help. Doesn't run horrible, but golly, it's richer than Donald Trump. There's no fan clutch. It just sits there and spins after you shut it up. Well, it's still getting way too much fuel at idle. We're we're gonna have to break it open and see what went wrong on the rebuild. Okay, we have the Holley 600 4-barrel off of the Valiant again. We were able to find a carb kit in stock at a Irish parts store just about 15 miles down the road in the community next door, so we went and got that. We are going to pull this carburetor back down, see if we can figure out why it's overfueling. Kind of get you caught up to speed. We had some return spring issues and some choke linkage issues that weren't letting the car come back to idle. And my kind of theory was that maybe whoever was working on the car prior to us was using mixture to try and get the idle down. In other words, fattening the car up on purpose, just to try to get it to slow down a little bit. We're gonna focus really on the primary side, so we're gonna dismantle that first. That's in the right spot. Not sure what brand kit this is. The gaskets are a little bit of a funny shape. There we go. Okay, this float actually looks to be a little low. Needle and seat are working. Got the reusable Holley blue gasket between the metering body and the bowl, the front bowl. Have the correct power valve gasket in here. You have the 2 rectangular slots in your power valve in a Holley. You need the round power valve gasket. If you have one with the 3 openings, then you need that round gasket with the 3 little fingers on it. In early Holleys, under your pump discharge valve, there's a weight. This is an actual needle valve. In the earlier ones, there's a weight, and then underneath the weight, there's a check ball, and the bottom of the cavity is machined so that the ball is actually what controls the flow of fuel. As they refined the design, they took the weight and ball and kind of made it one, so you have a weighted needle, and then it goes up and down into that orifice and makes a seal or not. Okay, the kit we're using is an actual Holley kit. It's the trick kit number 37119, pretty universal to the 4160 carbs, also these 600 CFM 1850-5s. What we like about the Holley kit is Holley makes it. It's got a really nice beefy base plate gasket, which is going to help us. And then it for the metering valve gaskets and stuff, they're the nice Holley blue ones that you can reuse if you need to make an adjustment or take it apart and troubleshoot something. You can reuse those guys. So it's got parts for many different varieties of carburetors. We're going to use some of them, most of them, but some of them we won't. So let's go ahead and reassemble this opposite of how we broke it down here. Each one of these is going to be just a tickle different. Like this one has 3 holes here, 2 holes here. This one has 3 holes here, 3 holes here. So you have to look very closely at your application and decide which one you want to use. Okay, so we put our new needle and seat assembly into our secondary bowl and we set the float, and on these it's real simple. Invert the bowl and then you want the float to be level with, this is the top now, the top of the bowl. We set ours just a tickle low. It's easy. Holleys are great because you can adjust this level on the fly. Got our float set. Let's install this bowl. Secondary float bolt done. And then power valve. And we've got the one with the 2 vents in it. So we need the circular power valve gasket. There's something I noticed, guys and gals. The old power valve, make sure I can get this in the camera here. It's bent, or at least the tip of it's bent. And it could be that was not sealing, or was not at least actuating correctly. Interesting. So there's an issue there that hopefully will correct with this power valve. Gasket. This will be the one with the horseshoe shape in it. And again, we'll kind of match it up. Make sure all the holes work. Perfect. Like so, we need our accelerator pump. Ooh, fancy blue. Look at that. Our spring goes here. That goes there. Okay, inverted, we have to make it level again. going just a hair past. Right there. Alright, threw the choke on. You've seen that come on and off a couple times now, so I did not video that. We're back together. We set the floats, did some of that kind of stuff. We've got a couple more adjustments to go through on this thing before we put it on the car. Yeah. Comes back to idle. 4 barrels can work as they should. Looks good. Let's talk about a couple of adjustments. The accelerator pump, and they're all just a little bit different, but on the Holleys it's a little hard to wrap your brain around at first. So accelerator pump arm, actuator arm, and then you have a bolt with a spring here. And the way that you set this, you don't set it at idle. What you do is you set it at full throttle, and what happens if you watch, and it's gonna be hard for you guys and gals to see because all I got's a GoPro right now out here, but at full throttle that spring will compress because the linkage arm is what's pushing down, not this nut. This nut's how you adjust the amount of pressure when you're not pushing down. It's the linkage arm, not the physical connection between the bolt and the nut and the spring that's actuating your accelerator pump. So at full throttle, what you want to see is a gap right here between the nut and your linkage arm. And according to Holley, that gap should be 15 thousandths. We are not there yet. We've got a little bit, but we're not there yet. Okay, the second adjustment that's often missed on these Holleys is setting up the secondaries. So there's a little screw right here. It's a little flathead screw. You gotta have a little screwdriver to get in here, and it runs up and hits your linkage on your vacuum actuator. And what you want to do is you'll need a flashlight. You want to back that screw out, and this one's really stiff. I know this hasn't been adjusted on this one. You back it out until you can't see any light, until the throttle blades are closed in the bore. Right there. And then you want the screw so it just touches the throttle lever on the choke linkage over here, and then from that point you take it and you go a quarter turn more, just like that. That's it. Now your secondaries are set up. This puppy is rebuilt. Everything should be set up, ready to go. Tomorrow morning we will slap this on the Valiant and see if we have better idle. We should. I've got the idle mixture screws at 2 turns out. We'll adjust that, and eventually if we can get it to clean up, then we'll put a vacuum gauge on it and do it the real right way. So hey, we'll check you in the morning and see what this does. We got some rain showers right over there, nothing nasty, but it is wetness. So let's see if we can't get you on a tripod here. See if we can't make this guy run here before this little shower shuts down our outside work spot. Okay, appears as though it's richer. Weren't expecting that result. Okay, I got to eat a little crow on this one, which means I screwed up. You know, don't hold it against me. So on these Holley jobs, between the primary metering block and the main body of the carb, you have a couple options for gaskets. Here's the gasket that we took out. Didn't really like it. It's kind of thin, but that's the style we took out. And this is the style I originally put in out of the Holley kit. One thing's different than the other. Right here, this piece. There is, these Holleys, there is a passage between the metering block and the body of the carburetor right above the power valve. And this gasket does have to be there to seal off between the little hole in the carb and the little hole in the metering block. Otherwise, fuel will simply pour down into this power valve core area and leak right into the throat of the carb. So we had one of these in the blue and we replaced that. Luckily, I think that was a pretty simple fix, but let's go make sure. The shower has passed, by the way, so it's sunshiny again and only about 300 billion% humidity. Carb's on. Much better. Talked about idle air mixture, 1.5 to 2 turns out. I like to start closer to 2. A lot of guys like to start at 1.5, but you're going to be in that ballpark. You're either going to be within about a half turn in or a half turn out. Just stay in that range, but be aware that if you have to compensate for your mixture with your idle speed setting, then you're going to want to recheck your accelerator pump setting. Now that setting that I think it was 15 thou in the instructions, that gets you started, okay? Once you're in here then, though, and you have your mixtures happy, either with a vacuum gauge set at the highest vacuum, or by ear, or by however you want to do it, but your mixture's happy and your idle speed is happy. Now you got to come back here and readjust here, and you do this with 2 3/8 wrenches. This is just a bolt with a lock nut. And now what you want to do is you want to come down and you want to adjust this to where your accelerator pump arm is just barely touching. No thousandths, no measurements, just barely touching. But, 2 buts. These arms for the accelerator pump are weighted. So like in this particular example, I backed this one off just to show you. I can still take my accelerator pump arm and I can lift it. The arm that operates the accelerator pump is weighted, so it's heavier on the inside than it is the outside. So it'll come up and it'll ride on here unless you do this. So we're actually too loose here. We're gonna have to adjust that a little bit. We're gonna give it about 1/3 to 1/2 of a turn. There. Now I can tap on this and there's no movement. So now we are actually, it's still sliding on here and it feels exactly the same as it was before, but when you hold it, there's no more space. There's no more clitter clapper. So that's where we want to be. Okay guys, so I think that's gonna be volume 1 of probably about a trilogy, maybe a quadrilogy. There might be 4 videos on the Valiant, maybe more, but we're going for 3 or 4-ish. But yeah, that's the Holley carburetor. Jalen picked up a thermostat gasket. We'll do that. It's in horrible need of a fan clutch and a new fan. We'll do that. And then we're going to tear into the brakes on this car and get those squared away. So appreciate you watching this one. Normally I'd take this for a little cruise and road test it and see what this little 318 feels like doing. But yeah, it rained today and our road is just mud. So I'll just back it out and go park it where it was. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.